Welcome to episode 6 of R&R Living Life. Hi, my name is Rosemary. Rick and I begin this episode in Norseman before making our way to Salmon Gums, Grass Patch and onto Esperance. Popular legend has it that after tethering his horse Hardy Norseman up for the night, Laurie Sinclair was surprised to discover that his horse had exposed a reef upon his return, which he registered in August 1894, putting the once non-existent town on the map. 120 or so years after Federation and 130 years after Laurie Sinclair's horse struck gold, Norseman remains a gold mining community. Other industries include pastoral stations and tourism, and Norseman is at the heart of the ecologically significant Great Western Woodlands. We drove past the Phoenix Tailings Storage Facility, which is 40 metres high and has a huge 4 million tonne pile of fine quartz tailings covering 12 hectares of land around the foot of Beacon Hill, to the truly remarkable lookout, with a 360-degree panoramic view of the surrounding countryside, including Lake Cowan, Butterfly Tailings Storage Facility, which ceased operating in 1987, the Central Norseman mining operation, which has been mining in the area since 1936, Mount Thirsty and the Western Woodlands. On our return from the lookout, we made our way past some of the primitive buildings that were built and poorly maintained during the early years of settlement. Salt lakes surround Norseman, with the largest being Lake Cowan that extends 6.5 kilometres south of Norseman and 120 kilometres north, and is currently mined for gypsum for use in ceilings, but originally provided salty water for the mines. Norseman suffers acutely from very low annual rainfall and a shortage of water. The life-size corrugated iron camels wandering around the centre of Pinsip Street roundabout are a tribute to the camel trains that carried freight and mail to the town in the early days of settlement. Another reminder of the camel trains are the very wide streets that were needed for the camel trains to turn around in. On leaving Norseman, we followed the Norseman Heritage Trail, a 25-kilometre side trip, which was the original Cobb and Co coach route to Dundas, with 10 points of interest. Dundas was the original town in the area, but it was very short-lived, having been created in 1893, but by 1894 richer deposits of gold had been found at Norseman, with the first coach journey between the two minor settlements being made in 1896. The sights along the route included the racecourse that was once the only social life in the goldfields, though the annual Norseman Cup is still run, rusty old pieces of equipment, holes in the ground, some being reworked as recent as the 1960s, mallet heaps where miners have dug holes in the hope of finding their fortune, the Lady Mary rehabilitated mine site, and a lonely grave of a solitary 27-year-old who died in the middle of nowhere. Abandoned head frames, an old dam built in desperate attempts to save enough water in this parched land, and the remnants of the Break O'Day cricket pitch built in 1893 by some miners eager to have a little social entertainment before joining the Esperance Coolgardie Highway. The trail was an interesting look into the history of European settlement in the Norseman area. As it was school holidays, we spent a couple of days in Salmon Gums, the name derived from the eucalyptus tree with smooth salmon-coloured bark that is found in the area, before continuing further south. Salmon Gums is surrounded by wheat and cereal cropping, having largely been settled by returning soldiers or soldier settlers who were given grants of land after the First World War. Salmon Gums was at the time considered on the fringe of arable land, with low soil fertility and marginal rainfall, which meant yields were poor prior to the 1950s. Agricultural research prior to the Second World War led to the discovery that the soil was deficient in trace elements of copper, phosphorus, and zinc. With the addition of these elements, the fertility of the soil was greatly improved and crop yields increased. The shed in the park was full of personal accounts of the pioneering history that told of the hardship in clearing the mallee, as well as a map showing where farms had been, with the majority of the blocks being 1,000 acres and priced by the timber that grew on them. Trees were pulled with the use of horses, and the outside wood of the stumps were chopped up by hand to below ground level and then packed around the stump before being left for 12 months before being burnt. There were some truly amazing recounts of the early years of the district, so very different from today. We were also amazed by the length of the trains carrying various freight, including iron ore, fuel, and grains, as they rolled past the caravan park. Interestingly enough, they did not disturb our sleep. When Rick and I had lived out west, we would often be amazed by the length of the coal trains that ran across central Queensland. The trains that sped past us at Sam and Gums, though, were much, much longer. I have included a full-length recording of a train, just to give you some idea of its length. Rick and I took a stroll across the railway line and into town. Originally, the town was a supply depot for miners on their way to the goldfields, and then, as part of an unsuccessful attempt to open up farming in the region, there really was not much left of the town but the general store, school, the hotel, and service station. Other businesses appeared to be closed. I was interested in the architecture of the church, as it appeared to be just a square building. As we returned to Gidget, Rick and I talked about the sheep yards left to rust not far from the caravan park, and the number of sheep needed to fill such a large set of yards. Later that night, Rick and I returned to the hotel and enjoyed a wonderful meal. We had found everyone we spoke to very friendly and welcoming, and up for a chat. Having taken its name from a nearby farm of the same name that had been settled around 1896 and was renowned for bountiful crops and good grass. Like salmon gums, the poor soil quality in the surrounding district made the development of farming in the area difficult and unproductive until 1949, when research discovered the missing trace elements, and since then soil fertility and crop yields have improved to make it an important agricultural district, successfully producing wheat, barley, canola, sheep, and cattle. Running parallel to the highway, the rail line runs beside a huge receival site for cooperative bulk handling, a grain growers cooperative that handles, markets, and processes grain from the surrounding wheat belt. It amazed me how farmers can plant crops in such marginal country. The day had started overcast, but by mid-morning had turned into a beautiful day. Rick and I enjoyed a walk around town before returning to Gidget as the afternoon cooled. I am quite saddened by the decline of these small rural towns, so full of history. We left Grass Patch the next morning and made our way further south to Esperance through the little community of Gibson, where we passed stands of flowering banksia trees along the roadside. We arrived in Esperance just after 9 and made our camp at the overflow area at the Showgrounds Recreational Reserve, though a little expensive, as all the caravan parks in town were booked out due to the school holidays. After setting up Gidget, we made our way into Esperance to have a look around and were met by the stunning turquoise waters of Esperance Bay, while further out in the bay, the waters were a deep blue. From the town centre, we made our way to Dempster Head Lookout, that gave us a spectacular 360-degree view of Esperance, the surrounding area, and the Bay of Isles, otherwise known as Rechurch Archipelago, which was declared a nature reserve in 1954. The archipelago, comprising 105 islands with a total area of 9,720 hectares, is located a few kilometres off Esperance. The Bay of Isles also has over 1,500 islets, which are usually submerged, being only exposed during low tides, while most of the islands are granite outcrops which have steep sides and no beaches. After soaking up the views from Dempster Head, We made our way back to the Don Mackenzie waterfront gardens, with the native shrubs, a novelty lighthouse, and unique wooden sculptures, and where we could look out at the port of Esperance that spans across 75 hectares, with the majority of land used for its operations, which facilitate 13.6 million tonnes of trade each year and is a vital trade hub connecting key industries in regional Western Australia to the rest of the world. The port, the deepest in southern Australia, consists of three wharves, two being land-backed, while the third, a purpose-built dolphin-style berth to load mineral products, with around 200 ships being loaded and unloaded. Major exports include iron ore, grain, and export of nickel concentrate, as well as the unloading of bulk imports of fuel, fertilisers, containers, and sulphur. We took a walk along the Taylor Street jetty, admiring some of the boats that were tied up to the jetty, while out in the bay tankers were waiting to be loaded. We could see large numbers of fish swimming alongside the jetty, but were not sure what fish they were. From the Taylor Street jetty, we then made our way to the newly constructed Esperance jetty, opened in March 2021, after the original tanker jetty was deconstructed in 2016, when structural components having either failed or were about to fail. The new Esperance jetty was built primarily from concrete and steel and was designed and built to pay homage to its 87-year-old predecessor, keeping the original tanker jetty's design with its classic curvature, a diving platform and shelter, as well as some of the original tanker jetty timbers being used in the construction of the new jetty. From 1835 to 1965, exports of wheat, salt, copper concentrate, and other minerals were loaded by lumpers at the tanker jetty. The last ship to unload at the jetty was a fuel tanker in 1977. In the 1930s, the best way for farmers to get their grain and stock to market was by ship, but the James Street jetty, built in 1895, couldn't accommodate modern ships, so a new jetty was constructed. The tanker jetty known as the Esperance Deep Water Wharf was built in 1935, reaching 875 metres into the ocean, and descended to a depth of more than 10 metres. A statue dedicated to the lumpers, also known as wharfies, dockers, stevedores, and waterside workers, who were hired for intensive labour to load and unload ships docking at the James Street jetty and later the tanker jetty, stands at the end of the jetty, along with that of what remains of the railway line. Around midday we made our way along the Ocean Drive with its string of beaches. The Esperance coastline, washed by the Great Southern Ocean, is stunningly beautiful, with turquoise waters, beautiful white sands, and in places massive granite rocks edging the beaches. Though not beachgoers, Rick and I still find them captivating. Along the drive we stopped to look at West Beach, set in a small bay where the rocks have been sculptured by nature into intriguing shapes and features a swimming lagoon between the reef and shore. We then ventured on to have a look at Firsty's Beach, with a clear view of Dempster Head, a rock formation named after one of the early pioneers of Esperance. Our next stop was at Chapman's Point, with great views out into the Great Australian Bight. On the western side of Chapman's Point is Blue Haven Beach, that curves round to the southwest and then southwards for about 1.5 kilometres to a 50-metre high granite headland, with the beach backed by a steep 20 to 30-metre high vegetated bluff. Further along was the curving southward-facing Salmon Beach that's about 400 metres long, bordered by two protruding wave-washed granite points with a continuous band of beach rocks rimming the beach. About halfway along the Ocean Drive we came to the Observatory Point lookout, with a steep asphalted descent to the car park. A wooden staircase led to a viewing platform with outstanding views of Observatory Beach, the coast towards Esperance and the small islands located in front of the cape, as well as a memorial commemorating the explorers who took shelter from a storm in 1792. It was interesting to see the sand dunes along the coastline, in some places pushed to fantastic heights of about 50 to 60 metres high by the unforgiving Esperance Doctor, which howls off the great Southern Ocean. The sand was so white, and in places sand drifts edged the roadside, while the wind-blown salt spray clouded the dunes in front of us. I was captivated by the wash of the rocks in places as the waves rolled ashore. There were so many stunningly beautiful stopping points along this stretch of the ocean drive. Though Rick and I were not swimmers or surfers, the unbelievably white sand and the clear blue waters were very tempting. We certainly enjoyed the rugged coastline, the amazing granite rocks and small islands offshore, the patterns in the water as the tide rolled in and out, the waves as they collided over the submerged rocky reefs near the shore. It was an amazing afternoon. We also passed the site of Australia's first commercial wind farm, the Salmon Beach Wind Farm, built as a research facility and generating power for nearly 15 years. It was the first wind farm in Australia, consisting of 6 turbines, with the farm being decommissioned in 2022 due to the age of the turbines, leaving just a single turbine on the horizon. Making our way back to Esperance, we stopped to look at the Pink Lake that was once bubblegum pink, but in recent times has lost its extraordinary hue and is now a pale, pale blue. Pink Lake, originally named Lake Spencer, is just one in a chain of wetlands that circle the town of Esperance and is recognised internationally for their importance as a habitat that regularly supports 20,000 water birds. Unfortunately, Esperance's Pink Lake has not been pink since 2007, when a combination of factors including fresh water entering the system and the reduction of salt levels changed the lake to the pale blue colour it is now. But it may become pink again when the water temperature and salinity levels create the correct circumstances. In 2017, the local council employed an environmental scientist to try and raise the salinity levels of the lake in the hope of returning it to its pink colour. We will leave you for this episode as the sun sets on another jam-packed day. Join us next time as we check out Cape Le Grand. Take care and stay safe. Cheers for now, Rick and Rosemary. R&R, living life.